I'm Montse Alvarado. Tonight on EWTN News Nightly. A number of tariffs take effect today while others are paused. What it means for the U.S. economy. As more countries call for a recognition of the Palestinian state, Arab nations call on Hamas to disarm and give up power. We have analysis from EWTN's Alberto Fernandez. Blessing Bonanza, how the Vatican is seeing a surge in a specific request. Plus, a day of reconciliation. The famed Circus Maximus in Rome turns into a large confessional as we speak to pilgrims. These stories and more tonight.
From EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, this is EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you for being with us on the feast of StAlphonsus Liguori. Our top story tonight, U.S. trading partners and Americans will soon feel the effects of new tariffs. President Donald Trump announced new rates for dozens of countries, but he also postponed the start date for those tariffs by 1 week. This will impact many of the goods you buy in an effort to bring more jobs back to America. The White House says it is restructuring global trade to benefit American workers. President Donald Trump ordered new tariff rates for 66 countries, the European Union, Taiwan, and the Falkland Islands, now set to take effect August 7th.
We'll see prices start to creep up.
The base rate will remain 10% for most countries, but raised to 15% for countries with a bigger trade imbalance. The rates will go even higher for goods from more than 24 other trade partners. But the resulting job boom will have to wait. The newest report shows manufacturing jobs fell.
Obviously, there were elements of it that we didn't love, but the trade deals are now in place that cover, including the U.S., almost 60% of the global economy. Huge deal for America, like huge investments coming in, commitments to purchase everything from energy to defense products.
Still, Democrats ripped the president, writing, Trump is plowing ahead with his chaotic trade policy by imposing the highest tariff levels since World War II. And they say his, quote, chaotic trade war has led to the weakest 3-month period of job growth since COVID.
Your healthcare prices are about to skyrocket. So food prices, infrastructure prices, construction, steel, wood, every single thing you rely on.
But the White House says things are only going to get better.
The One Big Beautiful Bill is now law. It contains enormously powerful incentives for investing in America, for working in America, for locating in America. And these are both going to be massive tailwinds for the economy that are going to create an economic boom coming up.
For more, we turn to Meredith Crowley, professor of economics at the University of Cambridge in the UK and a specialist in international trade. Dr. Crowley, thank you so much for joining us. Now, as we just heard, the deadline on tariffs for 66 countries, the European Union, Taiwan, and the Falkland Islands, has been pushed back to August 7th. Is that delay at all significant?
It's not really significant. Since Liberation Day on April 1st, the president has repeatedly pushed back the deadline when he still wants to get a concession or some type of objective achieved in the negotiations. And realistically, there's just never been enough time since he announced these tariffs in April to get all of these deals done. And so every time he kind of comes up against one, he does a bit of an extension. So I think this next one might be solid, but there's a few countries where there's really still some significant things to be worked out.
It seems like these tariff discussions can feel really ambiguous for our viewers and for anyone who's trying to figure out how it's going to affect them. If the tariffs do go through next week, what products are most likely to be impacted?
So we already know from the European Union that we import into the United States a ton of pharmaceutical products from the European Union, and the tariff on those is going to go up 15%. So that's been decided. We also import a lot of pharmaceuticals from Switzerland, and there the current tariff they're talking about is 39%, and that's really very high. It's not clear how this will ultimately impact the U.S. consumer because it could be that some of those pharmaceutical manufacturers decide to cut their profit margin on what they sell in the U.S. in order to kind of shelter the consumer in the U.S. a bit from the tariff. But ultimately, we would expect the price on pharmaceuticals to go up, which is tough. Also, all European cars are going to face a 15% tariff. Previously, it was just 2.5%. So most people buying European cars are buying sort of luxury European, fast cars. So that's going to be a significant price increase. And then more generally, there's a huge slate of tariffs against a host of countries that make lower quality, sort of lower end goods. So things like clothing. So all of sub-Saharan Africa is facing a minimum tariff increase of about 15%, some countries even higher. So because that one is so broad and is affecting so many countries, you should expect clothing prices in the US will go up a lot because the US doesn't actually make very much clothing itself. Most of that's imported.
Well, that's significant and obviously going to impact people directly. Let's talk about the president's mention of tariffs that will usher in newfound wealth. He keeps talking about the richness, right? And that it will lead to new factory jobs in the United States. What do you think of that? Is he right?
So, no, it's very, very unlikely to create any new manufacturing jobs in the United States. So when new factories are opening in the United States, we tend to make factories that are more automated than existing factories. So essentially, if you're building a brand new factory to manufacture cars in the US, you're going to set it up to use fewer workers than you did on the last factory you made.
Well, we'll keep watching those job numbers. I know they certainly are down still. It's great to be with you, Meredith Crowley, professor of economics at the University of Cambridge in the UK.
Thanks very much.
New jobs numbers show that hiring is slowing down in the United States. In July, the U.S. added just 73,000 new jobs, well short of the 115,000 forecasters had expected. The unemployment rate is at 4.2%. The big news is major downward revisions from May and June, cutting down the job growth originally reported from May and June by a stunning 258,000. President Trump says he is firing the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, claiming she has changed the monthly data for political reasons. The Federal Reserve will keep interest rates as they are for the time being. The benchmark lending rate is between 4.25 and 4.5%. It's been there since December. However, for the first time in 30 years, two members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors dissented from the move. President Donald Trump has previously said he would like interest rates to be lowered. Senate Republicans are considering possible rule changes, allowing them to more swiftly confirm President Trump's nominees, after Democrats continue to use all possible options to slow down the process. Democrats say they will not allow President Trump's nominations to go through in protest to his policies. Capitol Hill correspondent Eric Rosales joins us with the latest. Eric?
Good evening, Monse. These are unprecedented times, and never before has a president not been allowed to have any of his nominees in place after being in office for more than 7 months. Senate Majority Leader John Thune says what Democrats are doing is, quote, an unprecedented level of obstruction and delay. He claims that it's putting national security in danger.
As of this date, back in 2021, Joe Biden had gotten 46 nominees confirmed either by voice vote or unanimous consent. Donald Trump has zero, not a single one.
Leader Thune is warning Senate Democrats to be prepared to stay in D.C. during the August break to get hundreds of nominees through. Senate Republicans are now considering changing the rules, such as cutting the time requirements and reducing the number of votes needed to get them passed to a simple majority vote.
And the sad reality is that there are a lot of these people who fill important positions in our government who need to be able to be confirmed to get there so they can do their jobs.
Senate Republicans are on board.
So whether it's shortening cloture times, whether it's calling several hundred nominees no longer Senate confirmed, whether it's saying simple majority, whatever it is, if we are not allowed to do the business of the Republic, let's not forget, this is also depriving the American people of our ability to legislate, because floor time is the coin of the realm in the Senate.
Around 1,300 positions require Senate confirmation, such as Brian Birch's position as ambassador to the Holy See, which could be voted on in the next few days, after Leader Thune filed cloture last night. The process has become more cumbersome in recent years. The average time to confirm a president's nominee is nearly quadrupled during the last 6 administrations. Democrats defend their actions, saying they are simply following the rules.
The ideal way to solve this is Democrats and Republicans working together in a bipartisan way to come up with appropriation bills. And we're making some progress on that.
Republicans tell me Americans voted to put them in charge after they saw the impact of former President Biden's failed policies. Senator Thune says Democrats better be prepared to stay in D.C. or change their ways, because that's what President Trump wants. At the Capitol, Eric Rosales, EWTN News Nightly.
Thank you, Eric. Well, President Trump says he has ordered 2 nuclear submarines to be repositioned following what he called highly provocative statements by the former Russian president. Trump announced the move on Truth Social following comments earlier in the week by Dmitry Medvedev, who is now deputy chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation. Medvedev have cautioned against the president's new deadline for Russia to end the war, saying it would not end well for the U.S. In a stunning move, the 22-member Arab League, the entire European Union, and another 17 countries have issued a joint call for Hamas to disarm and relinquish power as authorities seek peace in the region. The nations backed a declaration signed at a UN conference earlier this week. The text also condemned the October 7th attack by Hamas on Israel and called on the terrorist organization to hand over its weapons to the Palestinian Authority. This is President Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff, along with U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee, visited an aid site in the Gaza Strip. Witkoff says he spent over 5 hours inside Gaza to gain an understanding of the humanitarian situation and help craft a plan to deliver food and medical aid. Meanwhile, church leaders are weighing in. Bishop Abdallah Elias Zaidan, leader of the Eparchy of Our Lady of Lebanon of Los Angeles, says in part, quote, "I commend President Trump for acknowledging that starvation is happening in Gaza, especially affecting children, and I urge him to demand the immediate expansion of humanitarian assistance through all channels in Gaza." Joining us now is Ambassador Alberto Fernandez, a longtime Middle East diplomat and EWTN News contributor. Ambassador Fernandez, thank you so much for being with us again. I want your reaction to this Arab League call on Hamas to disarm and relinquish power in Gaza. How significant is this?
Well, the significance is the symbolism. It's a powerful message. It's a powerful political message, especially the unanimity of the Arab states, because it, for example, it included Qatar, which is a major supporter of Hamas. So there's powerful symbolism in what was done. At the same time, of course, I think very few observers expect that Hamas is going to willingly surrender its arms or give up power, especially to its bitter rival, the Palestinian Authority.
Well, the Palestinian Authority being involved in all of this is interesting, but do they actually have the organizational capacity to lead, to accept that kind of a concession from Hamas?
That you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly the concern. The Palestinian Authority, the PA, or the PLO, which rules, we say, on the West Bank, is a very weak entity. It has a lot of corruption. It's highly dysfunctional. President Mahmoud Abbas is able to remain in Ramallah basically through the forbearance of the Israelis, of the IDF. So this is an organization and a rule which is really, really weak. In fact, Hamas's great goal is to kind of subvert the PA, maybe from within, maybe from without, and take over the whole thing. So that's the problem in using the PA as kind of the big alternative. Is it's shown itself to be extraordinarily weak and not very trustworthy, but we don't have any other real good options.
There aren't many good options, and some options also that are being explored around aid are specific to that visit that Steve Witkoff spent in Gaza. Do you think that it really could help to refine methods of delivering aid to Palestinians to have more intervention from the United States?
Well, certainly one logical way to subvert or to eliminate the Hamas and Israel. Israel is, Israeli ministers in March said they didn't want any more aid going into Gaza. Hamas practices a policy of kind of weaponizing the civilian population, as kind of a tool of policy, a tool of propaganda. But the getting more food in, to kind of flooding, giving aside whatever Israel wants to do or whatever the Palestinians want to do. They're both playing a political endgame, flooding Gaza with food so that starvation tactics or hunger tactics become less of a weapon, even though we know Hamas steals it, and all of that is one tactic that can be used. Unfortunately, we're entering a period where the food question is still there, but there's a larger question that needs to be decided, and that is, how does the war end? And that is, the food issue is tremendous, but how does the war end in military victory or in some kind of bitter compromise? That's actually the larger question that everyone's wrestling with right now.
Right, it's the one that we're watching. We're looking for that ceasefire. Well, Ambassador Fernandez will come check back in with you as things develop. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have a lot more still to come on EWTN News Nightly. Christians in Armenia, a story of one struggling country that is often forgotten. What makes it relevant today? We'll discuss. And how much harm is gender-affirming care causing? A government agency is launching a new investigation. As wars rage between Ukraine and Russia, Hamas and Israel, and other places, one struggling country that is often forgotten is Christian Armenia. In recent years, the country has been in conflict with neighboring Azerbaijan. In 2023, Azerbaijan captured Nagorno-Karabakh, part of ancient Armenia, where 120,000 ethnic Armenian Christians lived. All the Christians were forced out. None were allowed to stay, and many of them died. Now, tensions remain high between the two countries, but the Trump administration is efforting a peace deal. Joining us now is Nadine Mayenza, co-chair of the International Religious Freedom Roundtable. Thank you so much for joining us. First off, can you explain this relationship between Azerbaijan and the ethnic Armenian Christian community?
Yeah, so the ancient country of Armenia, it was the first nation to adopt Christianity in 301 AD. And they once were much larger, and part of the country ended up becoming part of the Ottoman Empire. Part of it went into the Soviet Union. And so we're now, the country of Armenia is the part that was part of the Soviet Union. And so really they consider West Armenia to be part now of Turkey. And of course we all know that the Ottoman Empire that committed a genocide in 1914 against Armenians, Assyrians, and others. And that's just that really genocidal intent is something they have continued to face here in Armenia. And Azerbaijan has been on their border, one of the countries on their border, along with Turkey. They are now threatening to take more land, and the U.S. is involved in trying to broker some peace.
Why is that land so important or so strategic for Turkey and for the surrounding countries?
Yeah, so, Azerbaijan and Turkey have this, I believe it's one state, two countries. And so they really do work closely together in how they approach some of their goals. And Azerbaijan has been wanting to take more pieces of Armenia. And it's important that the U.S., the international community, the Christians of the world stand with Armenia and say that they shouldn't have to give up any more of their land, and that the Armenian Christians here should not be subject to any more persecution, or certainly not any more ethnic cleansing.
Now, President Trump is working to bring peace between Armenia and Azerbaijan. You mentioned that a second ago. Is peace actually possible between the two countries, knowing the reality of that aggressive two-state partnership that exists there?
It absolutely is possible, and it's what we should be pushing for, and it's certainly what we want. Our fear is that Azerbaijan uses this as an excuse to grab more land, and having peace would stop that. So they've given a couple of conditions. They've agreed to a peace deal, but given a couple of conditions. That is, the Minsk group that kind of oversees a lot of security in the region would be eliminated, and then Armenia would need to change their constitution to take Nagorno-Karabakh or Artsakh out of it. But the fear is they haven't signed it, even though they verbally agreed to it. And we're afraid more conditions may come. So that's why the U.S. being a part of this and pushing towards this agreement is crucial.
Well, Nadine, thank you so much for being there and for explaining this terrible situation to us. We will certainly join you in prayer.
Thank you so much for having me.
Officials in Maryland say a 13-year-old boy died after getting trapped in a storm drain during heavy rainfall on the East Coast. Storms have fired across much of the region yesterday, delaying flights and prompting emergency declarations from the Philadelphia area to New York City. The National Weather Service warns that more storms may bring flooding to the northern mid-Atlantic and southern New England through tonight. The Federal Trade Commission is launching a probe into the harm of so-called gender-affirming care for minors. The FTC says there may be potential unfair or deceptive trade practices regarding transgender surgeries and drugs. The probe is focused on minors, but also open to adults who may have experienced harms from, quote, false and unsupported claims about so-called transgender treatment. Up next on EWTN News Nightly, we have a confession. Actually, we have hundreds of confessions during the Jubilee of Youth, and the open-air event takes place in an unlikely setting. Plus, an unprecedented number of people are seeking the blessing of Pope Leo. We'll explain. The Vatican says there's a surge in requests for blessings from the new Pope. In the first month for Pope Leo XIV, there was a 30% increase in requests for the blessings. The parchment copies are a traditional practice that combines devotion with fundraising for charitable works. Cardinal Konrad Krajewski says in a typical month, there are around 15,000 requests for a parchment blessing. In June, the number rose to 20,000. The Sacrament of Reconciliation took center stage in Rome as thousands of young pilgrims gathered in the Circus Maximus, an ancient Roman arena now transformed into a vast open-air confessional. EWTN Vatican News correspondent Valentina Di Donato has more.
The global reach of the Universal Catholic Church was made evident with the 200 confessional stations gathered in Rome's famous Circus Maximus. Throughout the day, hundreds of young pilgrims lined up to reconcile themselves with the Lord.
Although we're speaking to a priest, it's like speaking directly to Jesus and talking about, those hidden parts of you that you might not let other people see. And I think young people now are searching for something firm and something true, and something that's well-rooted. And I think confession gives young people a space to just be vulnerable, and a space that they're welcomed, just, whatever stage that they're at in their faith.
I think confession is just a relief. I can say wherever I want all my sins and not be judged by my sins. I think that's really good, because if I talk to anyone, probably I will be judged. And here I can say everything and know that it's a safe place.
On this day of penance, 1,000 priests were available to hear confessions in English, Italian, Spanish, French, Portuguese, and Polish, with additional rotating stations offering the sacrament in German, Hungarian, Slovak, Korean, and Chinese. The pro-prefect of the new evangelization section of the Dicastery for Evangelization, Archbishop Rino Fisichella, and the mayor of Rome, Roberto Gualtieri, were also present. For the international pilgrims, the sacrament acts as a reminder that we can return to God's grace, no matter how far we have strayed, and begin again as sons and daughters of the Father.
One of the things Jesus said as a command was go out to all the nations and preaching the kingdom of God and giving them forgiveness. And I was just sat there thinking, I'm so blessed to have a God who, even doing with everything on the cross, he still knows that we're going to mess up and still wants us to come back to him and just enjoy his love.
A priest told EWTN News that the Sacrament of Reconciliation offers young people an opportunity to seek healing and look forward, and not back, on what may be preventing them from living a fulfilling life.
Well, I think young people should go to confession more than anything else is to feel the healing presence of God, to feel that love that God has for us that's unconditional. And I think all of us, there's always something that we have that doesn't sit right with us and dwells on us. And I think it's important that we're able to express that, and by asking for God for forgiveness, to heal ourselves as well, because the greatest gift we can give to ourselves is to forgive ourselves.
In Rome, Valentina Di Donato for EWTN News Nightly.
The Jubilee of Youth wraps up this weekend, and you can take part right here on EWTN. Right after this, we have a Jubilee of Youth Penitential special at 6:30 p.m. Eastern, and then tomorrow begins an epic two-day conclusion as all the pilgrims will gather in Tor Vergata like they did at the last Jubilee in 2000, 25 years ago. Pope Leo XIV will lead a vigil prayer service, and we'll broadcast that here at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then early Sunday morning, we'll take you to the closing Mass starting at 2:30 a.m. for those who wake up really early, and then later once again at 7 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to head over to EWTN.com to see all we're offering as the Jubilee of Youth comes to an end. Today is the feast of StAlphonsus Liguori, a bishop and doctor of the Church. StAlphonsus was born near Naples in 1696. He was renowned in the fields of canon and civil law, but left the legal profession to become a priest. He went on to become a bishop and founded the Congregation of the Most Holy Redeemer, the Redemptorists. For his writings and moral theology, he's considered a patron saint of confessors and moral theologians. Alphonsus died in 1787, was canonized in 1839, and declared a doctor of the Church by Pope Blessed Pius IX in 1871. Saint Alphonsus, pray for us. We thank you for watching tonight. Remember, you can follow us on social media, Facebook, X, and Instagram at EWTN News Nightly. I'm Montse Alvarado. Good night, and God bless you.